Hi, my name's Bob Kingscote. We farm Toppersfield in Waiau, North Canterbury. It's a 630 hectare property. I farm it with my wife Mary, and used to farm it with 3 girls, but they've all vanished. The rainfall here is 900 mils average, and it varies from 1500 down to 600. It gets very, very wet in the winter, and we've had 3 droughts in the last 31 years. We farm deer, sheep and beef here. There's 7,000 stock units. The deer, there's about 1,000 deer altogether, including young ones. We used to farm 150 stags, and we're down to very few now. When our daughters left, we've had a stock manager helping, and he does all the physical work now. And we also do a lot with contractors that come in on a daily basis, so ease of management. With regard to the deer, when we reduced our velveting herd down, we increased our hind numbers, and we finish all our weaners straight for export. 30 years ago, Mary and I dammed the creek up here. You wouldn't be able to do it now without consents for beautification and for ducks in the garden. And now it's acted as a sediment trap over those 30 years, and this year with the North Canterbury drought we were able to come in with diggers and great big trucks and take all the sediment out of the trap. It cost us about $5,000 to do so, and all that sediment went back onto the farm. This is the start of deer unit on the farm, and the first thing I do is make sure that the deer have room. I always remember Tim Wallace years ago saying, "Give them room, boy, and they'll produce." So that's really important for welfare issues and productivity. Now we've got a gully down here that goes way up for another 1.5 km, and it's a small gully, and the water only runs in here for 4 months of the year. So what we have done, this is the end of the deer unit, and we have fenced off an area through these trees that goes another 300 metres, and that's fenced off, and that's mitigating any of the problems that we have in this gully where the deer are. This small paddock here is a paddock of pasture for summer feed, and undersown with ryegrass and clovers and plantain. And the ryegrass is the new UK grasses, high sugar grasses, Abba Magic, and they've been proven to be really good here and production wise, and they hold on, got a bigger taproot, and they're holding on into the drought longer than conventional ryegrasses. In the summer we had hinds and fawns grazing on this small paddock, and we've got another couple as well, and with a runoff, and they did extremely well. This is erosion, what not to do. As you can see in the background, this block was developed years ago, and we should have left more manuka on the hillside. We didn't, and then 7 years ago we had a weather event in the midwinter, and a lot of rain, bang, this terrible erosion behind us. So what have we done? We've purchased these poplar poles from Environment Canterbury, and over the last few years we've planted these poplars which have taken hold, and has actually stopped the erosion. One of the main problems with deer farming is running of the fences when the stock get under pressure, and if you're not careful they can come and run up and down this particular fence is a good example in a wet period. So you've got to get them out of paddocks like this in a wet period in the winter, and they can make a great big track along there, and then the water gets in, and before you know it, you've got a 2 or 3 foot uh, channel down there. We filled that fence line in with rocks quite a few years ago, and this particular corner we fenced off because the deer would hang into that corner, and that was just bare earth. Again, you were getting erosion, so we just fenced it off years ago, planted a few oaks in there. We've done that further up with natives. Years ago, one of the previous owners of this farm, Griff Jones, had wonderful vision, and during the both wars, when all the man labour was off the land, this country that you can see for miles just reverted back into scrub. So after the Second World War, Griff came back and he cleared the land that you can see here, but he had vision, and he left all the scrub, the manuka and natives, all from here on upwards in all these gullies. You can see an example down there. So he was a man ahead of his time. No, he really wasn't, because farmers were all like that. We all care for the land. We have just developed 2 years ago. This is part of a new block, which was covered in scrub, so it was root raked and disked and sown in seed. We were very, very careful of what we took out in the way of scrub. We left it, as you can see, in very steep areas and in the gullies, and where we thought it may slip in the future, we've left pockets of little bits of scrub. So it's given us huge increase of production, and we've been doing this over the last 30 years, but we're getting better and better at doing it. Behind me is a wetland that's been there since God created it, and we have just got money from Environment Canterbury to fence this area off, and you can see a new track being on one side of it, and that fence will go in 10 days' time. There's an existing fence on the other side of the gully, so that'll be fenced off, and they're paying for the fencing. And we are going to plant that area, that wetland, with more sedges, a few more cabbage trees and kauai. It's one thing we want to do, and we love that area. It's lovely to walk in it, and it acts as a sponge. And when we do that, Environment Canterbury want us to do another gully just nearby. 3 years ago, I was extremely worried about the wildling pine problem in the Amiri Range behind us, and was the instigator of getting my neighbours together so they could have basically get help from outsiders like Environment Canterbury Biodiversity Division, and trying to control the wildling pines and stop them spreading east from this point. So we've done that, and out of that, the catchment groups were formed. This one in particular was formed, and at the same time, through Landcare Trust, there have been 4 major catchment groups formed in North Canterbury. This catchment group curtails about 100,000 hectares. It's called the Upper Waiau Catchment Group. There's one Lower Waiau Catchment Group, is around Cheviot, and another one in Cheviot, and the Harden Catchment Group. We have been delaying our meetings with catchment groups in the last 7 or 8 months because we have a major problem with the Huranui Waiau water plan, and that was operative in the Huranui catchment as of December 2013. We have formed a nutrient working group over the last 6 or 7 months, and we've been talking through a hole in the head and got nowhere, and we can't get a plan change that is equitable. It's the plan, as far as we're concerned, is bad, basically bad planning, and it doesn't work as far as if you're a dryland farmer. We now have to come to an agreement with Environment Canterbury on how we're going to go forward over the next 3 years. There's 3 options available. One is an advice note, 2 is a memorandum of understanding with Fish and Game in particular, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion that in the next 3 years in the Huranui catchment that dryland farmers can still farm as they have been, unless they are going to change their practices, like, for instance, put on dairy grazing, which would increase their nitrate leaching level way up, and then they'd have to get a consent. Okay. The Waiau catchment, we have another 3 years to work out a loading for our river. We do not want to make the same mistakes as what happened in the Huranui, and I think right throughout New Zealand the Huranui plan has put shivers up the spines of many farmers. That is why catchment groups are very, very important for all New Zealanders. And in our area, the Upper Waiau Catchment Group, we have a big task ahead of us. So our group of approximately 40 farmers can make a difference and have a say on what goes into the plan. First of all, we have to make sure that our river stays pristine, and we all want that to happen. Secondly, we also want to have the right to farm, as we have, and so the nutrient load has to be, one, fair to all, irrigation farmers and dryland farmers, and give us dryland farmers room so we can develop within reason in the future. I personally think that catchment groups will play an even greater role in the community in other aspects other than environmental issues.